We are talking about the movie, The Titan. This one directed by Lennart Ruff, and is actually his feature film directorial debut. He has directed a few shorts before, and this one stars Sam Worthington. Yes, him from Avatar and the Clash of the Titans series, and you've also got Tom Wilkinson here as a supporting cast member. Now the story is quite an intriguing one. It basically focuses on this, the planet's, well, it's a few years in the future, kind of the near future, and we are told that basically the Earth simply cannot cope anymore. The population has risen too quickly, all the resources are running out, and we're told in around 15 years that simply it's just not going to be a hospitable place to live. So humans must look to the stars and try and kind of find a new homeworld to try and live on. Now we've seen that kind of premise done loads of times before, though I do feel this one does a little bit of a twist on it, because in most of these films you'll get the idea being to terraform a planet, to kind of transform the planet to make it a hospitable place for us as humans to live on it. But in this one the idea is they can't physically change the planet to kind of, or in this case not a planet, it's Titan, the moon. They can't change it to suit humans, so instead they'll change the humans to suit this Titan. So they basically get a group of volunteers, all of which who have displayed some type of kind of exemplary skills in survival in one means or another, and transform them, change them genetically into a kind of a super being able to survive on planet, and therefore start kind of preparing it for the remainder of the human race. So there you go, that's your kind of your basic setup. As you'd probably expect, it's a science gone awry situation, so things will go from bad to worse. So let's discuss what works with this movie. First of all, I think the actual premise of this movie is quite sound. I think it's quite although it's a similar idea that we've seen a bunch of times before, the idea of kind of transforming and genetic engineering humans to suit another world is a fascinating one, and I feel it's taken kind of somewhat seriously and makes it for an interesting plot setup. I feel the acting as well is pretty good. The bulk of the story is actually from the wife of Sam Worthington's character. Although Sam Worthington does have a large role in this, I would say the movie is really about his wife and how she is coping with it, and it's kind of from her point of view, and kind of seeing her husband kind of change and all of that, and having to deal with the people from the facility and also other patients' families and such. But I thought the acting was pretty solid here, and I've got to say I quite like the makeup effects when we actually have our kind of transformation scenes. They're not too flashy, but I feel they kind of feel muted but somewhat realistic because of it. So I did quite like this. So what are my problems with this movie? Number one for me is the pacing of this film. I feel this movie has some pacing issues. The bulk of this film is this kind of its facility, and we just kind of are seeing these guys being tested, having a few experiments done, and just kind of seeing a very, very, very gradual kind of change in them. But really not a lot. So it's basically a bunch of them going swimming, going jogging, being injected, and kind of like having this kind of like schmaltzy family life. And then, bam, all of a sudden, they're transformed into this kind of like very alien-looking being in the matter of minutes. So it kind of goes from being really slow, and then just have a snap of a fingers, they're kind of fully transformed into this very kind of alien-looking kind of creature and completely inhuman. So it's way too jarring. I mean, the kind of the beginning half of it could have been trimmed way down, and we could have had more of a gradual but not quite as boring transformation into these creatures. So that the pacing issues are off, and then to me the plot doesn't make sense, because there's decisions made in this film, and I'm going to try and avoid spoilers, but that simply do not make sense. These are people who have come in here willingly, but when they're fully transformed, they're allowed to kind of be with their families, and of course this thing has gone wrong at this point. That decision does not make sense to me. And then we when things start to go wrong, basically the soldiers on the base are just killing them straight away. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense, because I just really wouldn't do that. It's just the whole point of this millions of dollars and time have been invested in this, and the fate of the world is kind of you know, at stake. And then when stuff goes wrong, it's like, no, get rid of them, exterminate them. Doesn't make sense to me. So there's some really kind of poor choices in regards to some story elements here. And I touched on it just a second ago. It's very schmaltzy. I mean, the whole thing, love can overcome all, you know, is a little bit kind of like, oh, you know, saccharine sweet in places. I will say, if you've seen the trailer, you've pretty much seen the film. There's not really a lot of surprises in this movie, and I think the trailer pretty much gives everything away. I was surprised to see the girl who plays Missandei in Game of Thrones. She is actually in a supporting role in this film, though she doesn't get a ton of screen time. But that was quite nice. Overall, I've got to say, it had some interesting ideas, but I felt the execution of this movie was poor, with some poor story elements and some poor pacing. Although the pieces were there to have made a good film, I just feel maybe it needed maybe a bit more of a rewrite in the script and a bit more of an inexperienced director, and it might have kind of like turned out to be a bit more of an interesting film. As it stands, it's a bit frustrating and kind of boring initially, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.